Hello, everyone. Brother Al McClaney with this week's stewardship video. And before we go too far, let me go ahead and read the disclaimer. Then we'll get into the topic this week. No advice should be seen as a recommendation, as I am not a licensed financial advisor and is for educational purposes only. And let me also say, I am past the scare last week of Alabama's 1 point victory in the last couple of seconds field goal over Texas. Hopefully, we'll have a better game, less traumatic for me against Monroe or Louisiana Monroe. So, with that said, this week's topic I'm dealing with how some items we refer to as tools are not tools. So, some items we refer to as tools are not tools. So, I was inspired by two things. One, you see picture here. These are tools in our life that make things convenient. There's a corner in our kitchen on the counter that my wife, she's the queen of our kitchen, and I am not the king. But there are gadgets that my wife Jeline loves to utilize. She's definitely the queen of gadgetry. She loves IKEA, going to the Container Store. She's always got some gadget that she's bought. And when I looked at this corner of the counter, I saw several of them. Specifically, you may notice there is a special container here, plastic, for the bread. And you slip it in. She had to give me instruction because I put the bread back in wrong, but she told me how there's a way you fold the plastic or the bread and it slides it up, but it keeps the bread fresh. And also, you can see barely over to the right, that's her cookie tray where the cookies fresh out of the oven, dry for her business. That's a tool. Then this black thing, you can't really see it that well, but that's a George Foreman grill. And then the big pink item here is a air fryer. So all of these are different tools, and in the um, George Foreman is sitting under kind of a tray, a little kind of metal tray that holds up like the salt and pepper, and the oil goes into this. All of these are different types of tools here. Uh, and these make our lives easier. And these are tools that help. But there are also things that we want to call tools that are not tools. And we'll say, oh, for instance, and it's not for instance, this is what this topic of this week is: debt is a tool. I would argue against it being a tool. The Bible is clear, and we've got some scripture about the consequences of debt. And so after I saw that corner in our kitchen counter section with all those different tools that do make things very convenient, I went on a little road trip. It's been a while since I did a road trip, and I went to a certain section of town in Dallas-Fort Worth area where, I kid you not, within 2 to 3 miles, and I didn't even picture them all here, there's like 7 payday loan places. And I don't have to tell you, it's in a section of town where people of color reside, specifically African Americans. And this section of town, at one point, there was a minister at a prominent church, which is Friendship West Baptist Church, and Dr. Freddie Haynes. He actually started protesting up and down. He got some of them actually closed. While they're not illegal, they should be. To me, it's almost legal extortion or legal land loan sharking, because in most states, and I don't think Texas is one, there's no limit on the interest they can pay. And I haven't looked at the interest lately at these, but I know they're upwards of usually 30%, 29, 30%, 35%. And they're designed for people who have challenges going to traditional locations to get loans, like a bank or taking out a personal line of credit. But these loan places, and most of them would fall into the category of what they call payday loan places, where you go, and as long as you have a job, they'll make you a loan. Usually it's in the amount of about $300. And it's just exorbitant type, I'm trouble saying that word, interest rates. And in the state of Texas, they did pass a law a couple of years ago that is very transparent what the amount of the loan interest is and what the exact amount of the payment. And I think they even have to give you like a leaflet, a pamphlet about, you know, the warnings and or consequences or being careful, cautioning about debt. And I put up here some pictures that these were from my little field trip that I did in that 2 or 3 mile radius where I saw all these different loan places. And this is not meant to give them advertisement, but I thought it was interesting how many were in this location. And I don't think I've seen them ever go out of business or bankrupt. And this one down here, this PL $, there are some places where it's open, they are open 24 hours, 7 days a week. So I'm trying to think, what, in the middle of the night, you need to get a payday loan, but it's catering to people that may have low paying jobs, who've had credit card challenges. And as I said, to me, it's legal loan sharking. And I thought this one was symbolic, even a message that I think the Lord was saying, because right, co-located with this check-in title loan place was a funeral home, and debt in the Old Testament, it talks about it as being synonymous with death. All right, to own a debt, mortgage gets a derivative from like mortician or it morbid. If you look at like the derivative of a mortgage, and not saying, of course, a mortgage is not a debt that oftentimes is put in the same category of payday loan, but it could be in a situation where you get too much mortgage. But specifically, we're highlighting here payday loans and how destructive they can be economically. And so I thought that was interesting. Here's a check-in title co-located with a funeral home. So let's look at what the word says about debt. Now, it's not a sin to have debt, but there are some awfully candid, descriptive words that the Lord uses when it comes to describing debt. And Proverbs 22:7 in the Amplified says, the rich rules over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender. In some translations, it will say the borrower is slave to the lender. That sounds pretty descriptive to me, that the Lord is describing. He's not saying debt is a sin, but debt can lead to sin, and having too much debt where you can't do what the call of God on your life is. That would be a sin, because sin is doing something the Lord says don't do, or not doing something he says to do. And the last scripture we'll look at is Proverbs 6, verses 1-5 in the Living Bible. It says, son, if you endorse a note for someone you hardly know, and in modern day language, that's cosign, guaranteeing his debt, you are in serious trouble. You may have trapped yourself by your agreement. So look at the words that are being used here. Serious trouble. Trapped yourself by your agreement. Quick! Exclamation point. Get out of it if you possibly can. Swallow your pride. Don't let embarrassment stand in the way. Go and beg to have your name erased. Don't put it off. Do it now. Don't rest until you do. If you can get out of this trap, you have saved yourself like a deer that escapes from a hunter or a bird from the net. Listen to those. I mean, that's intense language being used. And that's for a cosigner. You're not the primary responsible person for that debt. This is just talking about a cosigner. Imagine that, how more serious it is when it comes to the person responsible for the debt. So right now, I mean, the Lord is clear in his word about debt, its meaning and its consequences. So you start to talk, well, what did you do about getting out of it? Well, I've got a short video here, Dave Ramsey describing his debt snowball. And that is a great way. It's about a 3-minute video describing the debt snowball.
Once you've got $1,000 in your starter emergency fund, now it's time to get rid of your debt. The way we attack the debt, we call it the debt snowball. This will take a truckload of effort. You got to get intense. Personal finance is 80% behavior. It's only 20% head knowledge. The debt snowball is designed to modify your behavior with money. Being a certified nerd, I used to start with making the math work. I've learned that the math does not need to work as much as you got to have the motivation. Motivation's more important than math. This is one of those times. In the debt snowball method, what you do is you list all your debts, smallest to largest. You pay minimum payments on everything but the little one, and you attack the little one with a vengeance. This is the way you got to do it. Hey, listen, even those loans from mom and dad or medical debts that have zero interest, I don't care if there's any interest. You got to get out of debt. And what we're going to do is knock out the smallest one. Because when you knock out that smallest one, you have this sense of, hey, I won. I knocked it out. I'm killing it. And that's what you got to have. You got to get fired up. And so when you knock off the little one, it's kind of like going on a diet and losing weight. So again, with the debt snowball, what we're going to do is we're going to list the debts smallest to largest, regardless of interest rate, squeeze every dollar out of your budget. You're not saving money anywhere, and you just attack on that smallest debt. When that smallest debt is gone, then you take all the money you can find from anywhere else in your budget, including the payment you used to pay on number one. The snowball rolls over again, it picks up more snow, and you attack number two. And you just go right down the list like that. Now, why don't we go highest interest rate to smallest interest rate, Dave? That'd be mathematically correct. Darling, if we were doing math, you wouldn't have credit card debt. So think. This is modifying behavior. This is about the deal where you absolutely have to control and modify your behavior. That's the deal. You got to get fired up. And when you get the first one, you'll get excited. When you knock off the second one, you get a little bit more excited. By the time you've knocked off 4 or 5, you're going to get so intense, you're going to have such blinders on that you're going to have the emotional passion to change your family tree. This stuff works. Pay off everything but your house in baby step 2 using the debt snowball.
And so what you want to do is, just like Dave said, you can't attack it. And you use the word, he's intentional about using that word, attack debt. You want to get intentional about it. You want to get intense about it. He mentioned baby steps. You can also go out on DaveRamsey.com and you can look at all the baby steps that he mentions in his program. And a lot of people probably know him because they've become famous now. Or just spend a little money. You go to Half Price Bookstore, which is the bookstore we have in our area, Dallas-Fort Worth area, and you can probably buy that Dave Ramsey financial piece for next to nothing now, $2 or $3 spent to get out of debt, and it describes in detail the baby steps. So let's go ahead and change gears, look at the anticipated earnings for this week, and I will tell you, not a lot of earnings, but I think these earnings will affect the market. Not a lot being reported, and I'll tell you why. Once again, no advice should be seen as recommendation, because I am going to mention some, possible investment opportunities. Do your own research. These are not recommendations, just in the spirit of education and giving you something to go redo your own research. Now, this is why I'm saying there's not a lot of earnings here, but I just believe these will affect the market. Reason why. If you look at on Thursday, FedEx is reporting. FedEx reported, and that stock symbol is FDX, reported last week that their earnings are going to be off by, I think they said 40%. They're projecting going forward, and they are projecting a recession. The market just tumbled. I mean, it was some bad, and you will see it in the chart. It was some bad selling last week that happened. I think that was part of people. Transportation sometimes is an indicator. It's not, sometimes it's a leading indicator of how the economy, because everything moves, right? You can look at how it affects everything, right? We already got logistical constraints right now, logistical challenges. If FedEx is saying that they're going to see their profitability drop hugely next year, and they're projecting a recession, I believe when they announce earnings, which still could be good, but the forward looking, what they're projecting is probably going to affect the market. We'll see, because it's after the close of 30. We'll see how it happens, what effect it has on Friday. Now, the other one I think that it will affect is Costco, because that's a consumer spending. And look at the two that are on Wednesday, Lennar Homes and KB Homes. We're going to get an interesting read on what's going on in the housing market. Right now, mortgage interest rates are at 6%. That's double of where we were, I think, earlier last year. 6%. And we're going to talk about interest rates coming up. Here is that tool I've shown you before, and there's that long link that you can just take a picture. You always pause the video and go out, or you just type in Google search or Bing search. You can say interest rate tool, and it'll take you to this page. And I've never shown this part of the page, but this is part of the CME Fed Watch tool. It gives you a countdown on when the next Fed meeting is going on, which is September 21st, or over here, 4 days, and even counts it down by the hours and minutes. Then it'll tell you what's the methodology they use for this Fed Watch tool, the user idea, and there's even a video demonstration. But here's the probabilities that they're saying on the 21st of September when the Fed meets. The current right now Fed rate is about, and that's basis points here, but that's about 2.25 range to 2.5% Fed funds rate. They're saying there's an 82% chance that at that meeting they're going to raise it 75 basis point, or that's like a half, what 3/4 of a point, I think is what the math would be on that, because it's saying they're projecting that the rate is going to go from a range of 225 to 250 basis points to 300 to 325 basis points. So it's a foregone conclusion. The market probably has baked that in, but what's spooking it right now is, are they going to keep doing this? Which there's nothing Chairman Powell has said in his comments to lead you to believe they're going to stop. It's called hawkish. They are very hawkish right now. Dovish means when they're starting to back off interest rates, but they're looking at the data and inflation is not coming down the way they want it. So with all the royal funeral discussion going on in the news with the Queen, and that date is September 19th of her funeral, it got me thinking about another type of investment you could do, because you could actually invest in currencies. Now you could do it through what they call Forex, foreign exchange, which is through currency, but there's another way you can use exchange traded funds that invest in that particular currency. What's a currency? Like the dollar, the British pound, the euro, the Swiss franc, Japanese yen. All of these are different ones. Well, I went out to our tool that we've used before, etfdb.com, and I typed in currency exchange traded funds. And here's a list. This is not all, of course, extensive, but it points out and makes the point that I was looking at. Here's UUP symbol. That's exchange traded fund. That's in the US dollar. It's up 14%. So that makes sense. When the world feels shaky and they're in trouble, they run to the dollar, right? We're right now, we're the world's currency. We're the reserve currency for the world. Eventually, some have said it may go to to China, but right now it's still US. So when people or organizations feel that there's uneasiness, uncertainness from a global level, they'll often go to the dollar. So you could invest in their uncertainty through UUP. Now, other currencies are not doing as well. Now, Bitcoin's in here, and some of you who had Bitcoin, they're treating it as a currency. It's down 57% for the year. Here's another currency. This one, Vesco, was UUP. Well, USDU is through Wisdom Tree. It's up 11%. Here are the other ones. The yen, which has been in probably the longest recession in history, they're still down 20%. And then I pointed it out, which would inspire me to actually go and look at this chart, which is the British pound. It's down 15% for the year. Let's look at those on a chart. So you can actually find charts on these. Look at the dollar. Man, it's been just going. I mean, it's been UUP is at $29.55, almost a high for it is a high for this year. Here's the British pound, total opposite. Now, I don't know if those are counter, meaning that when the dollar would it probably will be so. As the dollar weakens, you probably can invest in those other currencies because there's probably a counter, they are correlated differently. They have opposite correlations. So that could be a good strategy for you. So let's close out. We're talking about the overall market, QQQ, mainly technology. It went on a short buying, and then it's closed out the week heading down. And it could head all the way down to that level I drew before, which it closed at $289.32. And that's the exchange fund on Friday. It could go all the way down to 280. That's the next level of what we call support. Same thing for SPY. It closed at $385.56 on Friday. It could go all the way down to 380. And then after that, it could drop all the way down into like, oh man, it could go to the lows. We'll see what happens. So as always, close with, you can go and do a search under my name, Al McClaney, on YouTube. You can please like and subscribe, and then you can set up a notification so when I complete these videos on the weekend, you'll get notified early on when this is happening. Or you can go and email dcraddock@sjbcfamily.com, get it on a distribution list of our church announcements at St. John Baptist Church, which would include an email that comes out usually on Wednesday or Thursday that has all the announcements and includes the weekly stewardship video that I do here. Or just email me directly and I'll make sure you get it. So with that, as my pastor Denny Dwight Davis always says, have a good week and remember to keep a good spirit. And as we say on the stewardship video, remember Jesus is Lord. Therefore, he gives us the biblical principles we are to follow as he is the owner, but we are his faithful stewards, and we are the ones who put those principles in place based on where we find them in the Word of God over 2,000 scriptures there. I will see you next week.